those who don't know you, how did you get started in the game in Brisbane?
Right, well, when I came to Australia, to Brisbane in '72, because I'd not been a footballer of any renown in the UK, I thought to myself, I might become a referee. So I went along one Saturday morning to Perry Park, which used to open on Saturday mornings because they had a match of the round there every week, and picked up a book on refereeing. But then I just got a job working in the Valley, and a Scotsman came along to work there, and he was playing with a club called the Queensland Irish. And of course, when he heard there was a fellow Scot there, you know, we obviously caught up. Yeah. And then when he heard I was a goalkeeper, he says, "Whoa, we're looking for a goalkeeper." So anyhow, cut a long story short, went down to, well, it was at Robinson Park at Fairfield, and it was called the Queensland Irish Association was what we played under. And that's how I got involved in football. Initially, I was just a player, but as in most clubs, even in those days, there was never a lot of people that were prepared to stick their hand up and do work in the committee and everything. And they'd had a secretary there who'd been there for a long time, and I said to him, "Well, I wouldn't mind, taking over the job from you." So I think he left the following year. Bugger. So I used to go along. In those days, the management committee of the Queensland Soccer Federation had monthly meetings, and we went through all the minutes and everything, because in those days you could change the minutes. So if there was something there and the club objected, they'd stick their hand up, and provided they could get enough people to support them, the minutes would be changed. And anyhow, there were several of the clubs reckon that I used to be a pain in the proverbial there, and they thought, well, the best way of stopping them being the proverbial is get them onto the board of the QSF, which happened at the annual general meeting in 1983, and so 1984 was my first full year on the QSF, and then the then team manager for the under-16s and the under-18s, and also the Queensland team, a guy called George Roberts, dropped dead very suddenly. Came in for a football match, sat down in his chair, and that was the end of him. So the under-18s were playing a tournament in Canberra, and I was in a situation where I could get time off work. Bruce Still was the state director of coaching. I can't remember for the life of me now who his assistant was for that. Went down there, and the rest is ancient history. So I got in there because people wanted me to get off the floor of the club so that they could get home at a reasonable time at night, because I kept asking questions about this, that, and the next thing. So that was in the democratic days, as some people would call it. Before, people are now, the governance of the code changed when the FFA came in, and now basically the clubs are told what to do, and they don't really have much say in it.
Okay, so what's been the biggest highlight in the game for you?
Well, I think the biggest highlight in the game, and there have been many, including 1987 when we had Brian Robson, the then captain of England and Manchester United, guested for Queensland against New South Wales. But the biggest highlight for me would have had to been the 1997 grand final at Suncorp Stadium. To get 40,446, which was the official figure, though there was some claims that a fence was broken down up near the can bar, which was up in the northeastern corner of the ground. It got broken down, and about 2,000 to 3,000 people got in without paying. But as I said, 40,446 people, which was then a ground record for Lang Park, which is now Suncorp Stadium, and that was just unbelievable. And people still come up and tell me, even it was 20 years ago now, that they were there on the day, and some of them were only kids on that day, and now they're adults and got children of their own, and they still talk about that day as if it was yesterday. It was just absolutely unbelievable.
How did you get involved with Brisbane Roar?
Right, well, Brisbane Roar, Frank, of course, was the coach of the Strikers in 1997, and he played the following year. I left the Strikers in 2000, after I had a bit of a disagreement with the then coach, John Kuzmania, which wasn't unusual for John and I. And so I wasn't involved in any club. I was still involved with the QSF until the split between so the QSF became Football Brisbane, Football Queensland as it is now. It wasn't called that in those days, and Football Brisbane, were hived off, and I for a period of time I was on the board of both of them, and then I gave the QSF away, or Football Queensland should say, and just concentrated on the Football Brisbane. So I used to go around about to games and everything like that, but wasn't involved in anything. And then Rod Brown became the manager of Brisbane City, and he rang me up and he says, "Dazzle, would you be interested in being, my team manager?" Well, not having any club affiliations or anything like that, and things were changing a wee bit in Football Brisbane. I said yes, so that's where I was. And then in 2009, the first team manager of Queensland Roar, as it was even when I took over, decided he was going to leave. The job had changed and he didn't like the way the job was going, so he told Frank he was leaving, and Frank was stuck for a team manager, so he's rung up Brownie, because Brownie played at the Strikers when we won the grand final, and he says, "Do you think Dazzle might be interested in coming to work for the Roar?" So anyhow, I had a meeting with Frank, liked what I heard, and although I had a good job at the Brisbane markets at the time, I took a pay cut to go to the Roar because it was working in football, and I've never looked back since.
Who's been your best coach to work under at the Roar, and possibly your favourite player as well?
Well, I never really sort of got involved with the coaches. I always felt that the team manager was somebody who was in the background there to follow the instructions of what the coach said. Obviously, I didn't have much time with Frank because he got the sack in the October of 2009, and Ange took over, and Ange was an excellent coach. He was very quiet when he came to the Roar. It was hard to get a word out of him, and trying to get information about what was happening with team selections and everything was really a difficult job. But I'd have to say that Ange was definitely the best coach that the Roar has had. And in fact, I think he might be the only one, because after Ange, Rado took over, and that's when I went from the dressing room of the Roar into the front office, if you like to call it, into the operations side of things.
So obviously you sort of had some dealings with players over the time in your role. Who would be your favourite player from that time?
Favourite player would have to be probably Eric Partaloo, a real gentleman of a player, who he gave me a couple of bollockings at times because I forgot his favourite skins, but definitely a gentleman. And Bess Barisha, I always got on very, very well with Bess, and you see Bess on the television, and you see the way he's committed to the games and everything, but off the field, completely different.
How do you think the game is faring in Queensland, in Brisbane?
Yes, that's a very interesting question, Ian. I think the BPL, despite the trials and tribulations we had after the board of Football Brisbane decided to restructure the competition and went through a process of selecting teams to be in the BPL, which took us about 3 years, and then had the carpet pulled out from underneath us by Football Queensland in introducing the MPL, probably a year earlier than what the FFA actually wanted. But since then, I think the game has actually gone along quite well, and unlike in years gone by, where you virtually knew who the winner of the competition was going to be about the midway of the competition, the last few years it's really gone down to the wire, though last year Lions did have the competition won fairly early in the piece, but the fight for second, third and fourth was really very, very intense, very intense.
One last question, Dazzles. Is there any advice you could give to a young player today?
Yes, if you want to make the grade, you want to be committed to the cause. You need to really be, you've got to train the house down, as the saying goes. But you've also got to keep in the back of your mind, you've got to look after your future, because your period in the game is only very short, and not everybody can become a coach or a commentator or even become an administrator. So you've got to make sure you look after yourself in terms of getting yourself a degree or a trade, whatever it happens to be. But if you really want to, be a top class player, you've got to be really committed to the. Nobody's going to give it to you on a plate. And all these players that I believe that go overseas, when they're about 15 or 16, because somebody's told them, they're going to be the next Cristiano Ronaldo. We'll find out when they get over there. There's thousands of those players over there. So serve your trade in Australia first. Try and play a couple of seasons in the A-League before you go overseas, and then you'll find yourself much better equipped to play there, because the stories that you know about Craig that went to Middlesbrough and then went to Liverpool. I can't think of his Craig. Oh goodness! And the likes of Mark Viduka and Frank Farina and everything. They are rarities nowadays. It's such a cutthroat business to be in, and you really have to apply yourself and make sure that you commit yourself fully to the cause.
All right, Dazzles, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Ian.
Enjoy the rest of your birthday celebrations.
Thank you very much, and it was a pleasure to give you a few insights. Most people will probably turn it off after the first few words because they probably can't understand what's going on.
We do sometimes.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Thank you very much, Ian. That's excellent. Thank you.